this as interactive as possible and hope there won't be too much of an interference. Soft reminder to all, please put your phone on silent mode in order for the ceremony to run smoothly. Please minimize movements in the hall if possible. Washrooms are right in front. Can go through that door. We'll also be having a tea break afterwards, so no worries. We're not keeping you chained and locked in this hall for the whole day. And most importantly, please keep your masks on at all times, if possible, as much as possible. We appreciate your cooperation. May we have a fun seminar today. Thank you. Seminar. Without further ado, let's kickstart the event by inviting Associate Professor Dr. Azim Fazrul Ahmad Farouk, representing Deputy Vice Chancellor, Research and Innovation, USM, to deliver the welcoming remarks. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Acting Director of National Higher Education Research Institute, IPPTN, University Science Malaysia, Dr. Muhammad Mulfatu, the Honorary Professor of IPPTN, University Science Malaysia, Emeritus Professor Dr. Mushid Sirat, distinguished speakers of the seminar, Dr. Ahmad Nazri Sulaiman, Dr. M. Yandi Bunusami, and Dr. Guan Chan, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, Yang Berbahagia Professor Datuk Dr. Abdul Rahman bin Muhammad, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to the seminar on Bridging the Gap, Preparing Policy Papers for Policymakers, organized by the National Higher Education Research Institute, IPPTN, University Science Malaysia. Policy is a law, regulation, procedure, administrative action, incentive, or voluntary practice of governments and other institutions. Policy decisions are frequently reflected in resource allocations and should be informed by a wide breadth of evidence, not just hard research. Key issues include the quality, credibility, relevance, and the cost of the policy. Using evidence to inform policy is not a new idea. What is new and interesting, however, is the increasing emphasis that has been placed on the concept in the United Kingdom over the last decade or so. The term evidence-based policy making gained political currency under the Blair administration since 1997. It was intended to signify the entry of a government with a modernizing mandate committed to replacing ideologically driven politics with rational decision-making. Evidence-based policy-making has now become a focus for a range of policy communities, whether government departments, research organizations, or think tanks. Evidence-based policy-making is a discourse or a set of methods which inform the policy process, rather than aiming to directly affect the eventual goals of the policy. It advocates a more rational, rigorous, and systematic approach The pursuit of evidence-based policymaking is based on the premise that policy decisions should be better informed by available evidence and should include rational analysis. This is because policy is based on systematic evidence and is seen as to produce better outcomes. The approach has also become to incorporate evidence-based practices. Evidence-based policymaking can have an even more significant impact in developing countries. Evidence-based policymaking tends to be less well established in developing countries than in developed ones, and therefore the potential for change is greater. Better utilizations of evidence in policy and practice can help save lives, reduce poverty, and improve development performance in developing countries. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate IPPTN for organizing today's seminar with the aim to bridge the gap between researchers and policymakers and towards formulating evidence-based policymaking in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to once again thank all of you for inviting me to give the welcoming remarks to this seminar, and I would like all of you to have a good session with us at this seminar. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Associate Professor Azim. Now I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Shahu, Acting Director of IPPTN USF, to present a token of appreciation to Associate Professor Azim. Thank you, Prof. Azim and Dr. Mukhtaru. Members of the hall, we shall now begin with the main agenda. With that, I would like to call upon Dr. Guan to present on academia and policy research in the Malaysian context. Please welcome Dr. Guan.
Oh yeah, it's here. So left, right, this is the pointer. Yeah. Oh, and the thing is this one. Okay.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say thank you. Good day, all of you, especially to Associate Professor Dr. Azim Fauzan Ahmad Farouk, Director of the Center for Policy Research. I need my spec. Dr. Mahfuz Mustafu, sorry for my pronunciation, Acting Director of IPPTN. Then we have Professor Emeritus Dr. Moshidi Sirat, and Professor Ajang, Professor Dr. Nasri, my colleague Dr. Yandi from MUE. So my name is Guan Chan. I previously actually worked in the Planning and Policy Division in the Ministry of Higher Education, and Dr. Nasri is actually my boss, was my boss actually. Today we are both belongs to the Young YB group, not Young Berhormat, but Young Besara. Okay, so today I'm just going to thank you, and also fellow academicians and professors, as well as I understand there are some of you are postgraduate students. This is, I think, a very relevant topic of discussion, bridging the gap of policy between policy makers as well as researchers like you, academicians as well as postgraduate students. So today I'm going to share what I have learned actually during my course of work in policy planning as well as the research division. Actually, we have 3 roles in one division, that is policy planning, research, as well as coordination of policies. in that bahagian perancangan, penyelidikan dan penjelasan dasar Kementerian Pendidikan Tinggi. So I was there quite for some time. Then we have actually come out with a few strategic plans during my tenure there. We came out with the very first, if I may, tell a bit of stories about how the development of some of the policies in the Ministry of Higher Education. The Ministry of Higher Education was actually formed the year 2004 when they decided to have two ministries at that point of time. During that time, because all the years, both ministries are actually one under the Ministry of Education. But in 2004, the government has split them into Ministry of Higher Education and Ministry of Education. But that is just the starting point. The main confusion starts again when in 2013, we have, what do you call it, merger, 2013. I remember clearly the year because we were busy preparing for the celebration of a 10 years celebration of Ministry of Higher Education in 2014. 2004 and 2014 will be a 10-year celebration anniversary, but we split again. Then 2015, we combined again somehow. Then 2018, we split again. So here and there are many merger as well as split. I'm not going to talk long on this. I have a limited time of 1 hour. I better hurry up. So next slide, please. You want me to click? Oh, I can't move the slide. Oops. Yeah. Okay. Looking at slide, you can see multiple colors. This is the slide is being developed with intention. Like you can see, all the blue color is actually these are the what do you call it, institution under the Ministry of Higher Education. While the lower part of the yellow section is actually Ministry of Education is taking under the purview of Ministry of Education. So you can see Ministry of Education, you have primary schools, primary schools, and then go up to secondary schools, and then we have this PT3. Now we don't have any more PT3 or PMR. Then after that, Form 5, SPM, we still have the SPM after 11 years of basic education. And some of the students will go to Form 6, as well as which is also known as higher school certificate. I'm going a bit faster because there are quite a number of slides here. And then matriculation. The matriculations are both offered by Ministry of Education as well as Ministry of Higher Education. Over then, we have this tertiary education, which is used in the UCs or UC colleges for degree and postgraduate. We are also having the polytechnics as well, community colleges under the ministry. I'm just giving you a brief overall the Malaysian education system. This is important for policymakers, especially we as a Malaysian. We should know how our education systems look like in order to be prepared to do policies that are relevant as well as appropriate for the education system in this country. And you can see on my right hand side is the number of years of education, schooling years, and 10, 11, 12. By the time you finish your first degree or probably postgraduate students, the fastest track you can go is about 24 years old. That is a continuous pathways, education pathway, right until the tertiary education. I'm sure you are quite familiar, except maybe we should look at the total picture of the Malaysian education system. the education system in this country is far slightly different from other countries because we have the green zone, which I haven't talked about. That is the skill training center. We have the MOHR, Ministry of Human Resources, Ministry of Youth and Sports. We have the KBS, offer IKDTM, Institute Kemahiran Tinggi Belia Negara. We have the Ministry of Agriculture, which have the agriculture colleges. They are doing a livestock training program in diploma, as well as agriculture field, the agriculture field. So there are about 6 to 7 ministries are actually offering various skills training courses in the country. So all in all, this is the whole picture of the Malaysia education system. I'll move on. These are the ages of our students. So there's actually another sector of higher education which I haven't do not touch it because that is the lifelong learning. Lifelong learning meaning that whoever wants to learn, you will be given the access or the opportunity to learn. That lifelong learning is for adult learner, and then there are free open entry for lifelong learner and all these things. So this is totally another section which caters for adult learners. So all in all, you can see from the base, from the bottom of the education system right until the top, we are actually at every level. There are opportunities for policymakers to create better policy statements or even procedures to institute some reforms or changes that make our education system better. So this is what I'm trying to to send a message that we are not we cannot be focusing on one aspect of the policy, except the policy is all encompassing at all levels. Okay. So basically the objective of this seminar or talk is about understanding of policy versus what is education policy, evaluate the role of education policy, how education policy can move the education system into a higher level of excellence, maybe a higher performance, and acquire skills in shaping policy. What are the skills that you may need to shape a policy that is acceptable to all stakeholders? Remember, policies is not for us alone as the policymakers or as a researcher. We must not keep what called a tunnel vision on what we want to drive in a policy statement, because keeping that vision that only suits us without considering the interests of other stakeholders, it will never work. In fact, it will create a lot of controversy, and then it will be a debating. It will subject to the public scrutinies and criticism. That is not what we want. We want a policy that is acceptable. So what has Associate Professor Dr. Aziz has said, we need evidence-based. That is another point that he has raised, which is, I totally agree with you, absolutely, that we need evidence-based. But evidence-based itself is not sufficient because we need the acceptance of the stakeholders. That comes with the consultation, which we will go in through the other slides, okay? Let me go forward. So, as usual, for any, even for postgraduate students, we try to look for research questions in our dissertation or thesis. That is also applies truly applies to policymakers. In fact, it is more important than a dissertation. Dissertation is more like academic work. But to a policymaker, we always ask, does an issue or problem exist in the first place? If there's no problem exists, we will say, let's not fix what ain't broken, right? So let's see what the problem exists. So how do we know whether there's a problem existing or not? So a policymaker will have to send out the feelers. You can instinct, you can read a newspaper report, you can what you call follow the parliament sitting, especially our lawmakers in the parliament, members of parliament. They'll raise the problem faced by their public in their constituency. Some of them say, our kids, especially our children in the rural area, they say they cannot go anywhere because of their results are not that excellent. UCs have limited place. And then they are a fishing village. And then they have no idea what can they do besides following their parents for as a fisherman, right? So that's why when the politician, their representative MP goes to the parliament, say, why can't the Ministry of Higher Education build a community college? Give them training, give them some trades, so that they are equipped with skills and knowledge to enter the job market with a what do you call it, decent work with a decent pay. That's what we want. And then we have a problem. We don't have any training institution there in that constitution. So policymakers know how many community colleges should be set up, how many institutions, polytechnic or UCs, maybe to upgrade their living standards of the community. That's very important. So the problem can exist in such a way. So leaders, as well as administrators, as well as policymakers, must be able to send out feelers and get the instinct of what is the problem being existing. Okay? So there are many other examples. Many other. Can anything be done about it? Yes, of course. Like what I give you the example of community colleges. But to set up, can you do that? You have to think of what is the best solution. Okay, what is the best solution? There are many implications just to set up a community college in a constituency. For a policymaker, you must think of all the consequences and all these things. Of course, you need to talk about financial implication, how much investment you need to do the training of the teachers, how many human resources, etc., etc. They are so well connected. And then come again, what kind of program you need to offer to certain particular area of community colleges that you policymakers want to propose to be set up in that area. So there are 1,001 questions actually. And then finally, they have to have a committee, a head of department, top management meeting and all these things. And finally, we are actually looking at the need versus demand and doing some survey or research, simple research that will give us the evidence, just like what we have all know, that evidence-based research that provide a very informed decision by the policymakers as well as by the management. So this is how policies, development of policies in the simple terms comes about. Okay, so next one. So in a nutshell, policymaker is the process by which government especially translate their political vision into programs and action to deliver the outcomes. Whatever outcomes it is for higher productivity, or even some of the outcomes are blocking or retarding some actions. Sometimes we come up with a policymaker making like we put a moratorium on certain programs. Let's say, for example, nursing program. We put a moratorium. Why? That is a part of the policymaker making, because there are too many nurses being produced, and that causes unemployment among the graduates for nurses, they say. So unemployment is a bad thing. That's what they say. Or wages are being suppressed when they come up too many nurses and too few jobs are available in the market. So that is a policy making as a retardation, they call it, to stop something from overproducing it. So this policy making doesn't necessarily facilitate more actions or more things to happen. But there are also some policies that really put in some regulation, stricter rules. For example, all university lecturers are now being mandatory to acquire PhD qualification before they are appointed as a lecturer. Why? Because this policy wants to ensure that the quality of teaching and learning in the university environment will be higher than what has used to be. Sometimes during many years ago, I suppose maybe 20, 30 years ago, a lecturer with a master's degree can be appointed in the universities. But now the landscape of higher education has changed. We need better quality lecturers with a higher education as well as a research background. So all these things are happening from time to time. That's why policy making is a process that keeps changing. What we say is change is constant. We will never have policies that's fixed, but we keep reviewing it from time to time on a periodical basis, such as now currently the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 until 2025 for primary as well as post-secondary, secondary as well as Form 6 education. There is a committee actually monitoring the policy implementation from time to time. This committee is called PADU, Performance and Delivery Unit, situated under the Ministry of Education. And we have this Malaysia Education Blueprint for Higher Education 2015 to 2025. And we have this special unit that's been established. We call it PMO, Program Management Office. What are they doing? They are actually monitoring from every policy statement that's found in the Malaysia Education Blueprint. They are monitoring the progress, the achievement, as well as the barriers, all those issues and challenges. They are actually monitoring and reporting, and we tweet around. We tweet around from time to time to ensure that the policy direction is in the right direction as well as is implementable with success. That is the gist of it, the main point. So after saying so much, let's go back to the basic. The next slide, please. Okay, so it's a course of action by a single or group decision. That is our policy to set up the directive of, for guiding future decision. What is education policy? Mainly, it's a policy that deals with academic matters, with education matters. That is as simple as that. So I'm just summarizing in the Malaysian context. And it is for systematic reform in both ways, whether to enhance a certain actions or retard a certain actions. Next. I think in a nutshell, we can watch this simple video of what is policy. I think 2 or 3 minutes. Can we play that? Is it possible?
Webster's dictionary describes policy as a definite course or method of action selected by government, institution, group, or individual from among alternatives and in the light of given conditions to guide and usually to determine present and future decisions. To put it simply, the term policy is a plan for action, and it impacts our daily lives. Policy affects the air we breathe, the quality of the water that we drink, and the speed at which we drive our cars. Policy can be reactive, which means it's created in response to a current pressing problem. An example of a reactive policy might be coming up with a housing or shelter plan for homeless people who are living in the public spaces and can't meet their daily needs. A policy can also be proactive, which means it's a course of action designed to prevent a problem or issue. An example of a proactive policy might be issuing government rebates or kickbacks if old gas-guzzling cars are traded in for more energy-efficient vehicles. A policy and a law may at first appear somewhat similar, but they are different. Policies are used to guide the decisions of an organization or institution, while laws are used to implement justice and order. So for instance, a school might have a late or missing school policy, which guides the students and school's actions for what to do if a child is late or misses school. A more serious version of this would be truancy laws, like in the state of California. Their law states that if a child misses over a certain number of days of school on a consistent basis, the parents can be prosecuted and possibly sent to jail. Remember, a policy is a plan for action, but a law is an established procedure or standard that must be followed by members of society. It is important to recognize that policies can be used to create laws, and laws can in turn require certain policies to be created in order for it to be carried out. It is important to remember that anybody can generate policy. A policymaker is someone who makes decisions for a collective group or organization. Good policymakers base their decisions on the best scientific data available. To better understand the role of policy in our everyday lives, let's look at it in the context of the environment. Environmental science can be described as being an interdisciplinary field. Policymakers in this field develop policy by drawing from scientific and non-scientific fields to better address and understand environmental problems. In other words, coming up with good environmental policy requires having accurate scientific data as well as an understanding of the people involved in an environmental problem or issue. Environmental policies can exist at the local, regional, state, national, and international level. The policy known as the Montreal Protocol is an example of an environmental policy that phased out chemicals dangerous to our society, like CFCs. The Montreal Protocol is landmark because it was international and impacted the actions of many different countries. What are some important environmental issues that need better policies in place to help produce better solutions for all? The first step to making a difference in the world is science, followed by smart policy that is data-driven and considerate of social and environmental factors. What you learn about policy today will help you to create better decisions and plans for the future.
Thank you, Eddie. We can move forward. Meaning that policies can be are very interrelated with law, vice versa. So we know that policies actually is some actually that affects everyone at all levels when we are creating a policy. So we have to ensure that whatever policies that we implement, we also have to take into account what are the benefits that it can bring to every stakeholders. That's why the next few slides will be on engagement, the process of engagement with stakeholders. How do we go about engaging the stakeholders to ensure that policies are win-win for all, win-win solutions for all. We try our best as a policy makers, but sometimes the future we can't predict what will happen. Later I'll show you, maybe I mentioned one simple example later on. So next slide, please. So before that you have another. Before this slide, we have the process, the 5-step process. Okay, the briefly and quickly, we prepare the stakeholders engagement before we even start thinking of how to write or develop the policy. And then to engage that, you need to plan who are our potential stakeholders, and we have to prioritize especially in the field of education. It involves every man and woman in the streets, as well as family, as well as parents, children, and all these things. Even in the coffee shop, sometimes when you sit down with you enter a coffee shop for a cup of coffee, you can see your neighboring table, the pakcik and makcik all discussing that they are like an expert in policy making. So they will talk politics right until the cows come home, but nothing happens. They just have to, they talk like they are expert. These are policy making in the coffee shop. So we try to avoid that. We try to have evidence based. Next slide. So in doing any education policy, especially from my experience in Malaysia Education Blueprint, both for primary school and secondary school as well, Malaysia Education Blueprint in higher education, we always ask the learners, and the learners will want to know when this education policy is being implemented or published, the learners will want to know what is it for me. Am I going to have the needed skills to gain employment, fruitful employment, meaning that they have a decent pay, in a decent skills that they have acquired, decent skills, and are they going to be trained in the soft skills area? English language is so important. Some graduates that if you interview them, they hardly can string a proper sentence. That is a problem. Sometimes these are the feedback, the general feedback that we get from the employers as well as the private industry. But for us, we try our best. I'm speaking, although I'm not no more with the Ministry of Higher Education, but I'm speaking for the ministry. For us, you see, we have done our best. We have made sure that they have all the soft skills. We want to develop a holistic, balance, as well as entrepreneurial graduates, so that they are not only job seekers when they graduate, but they are job providers. They become entrepreneurs, so they are the job provider instead of job seekers. This is some of the direction that the good intention of the Malaysia Education Blueprint, especially for higher education. So the learners will ask, what will I get from this policy statement? As well as the parents, parents were very concerned about their children career pathway. So everyone wants to be a medical doctor. So how many medical doctors do we need actually? We are not going to reproduce. Now, especially the private universities, they are offering medical programs, as many as maybe over 20 private universities. And with more than 11 universities, public universities also offering. So we have lots of general practitioner GP, but we don't have enough specialists. So that is another policy side effect. So to speak, side effect. We fail to predict what kind of field of expertise that we need more, rather than more of general practitioner. So educational institutions too are asking themselves, with this type of policy, is it implementable? How much money we need to pump into public universities? Because they need to do more research, they need to do less teaching load for those researchers, for academicians and professors and all these things. So these are the things that the policymakers will have to think about that. So for researcher, we as an academician researcher, you do research a lot. But some of the research findings may not be translated into policy because of whether it's implementable or not, whether it's involved too high a cost, value for money to translate that research finding into policies. That is all the things that we need to factor in. Policymakers are very practical in terms of delivering the policy statement that is applicable to all stakeholders. That is the gist of the statement for the policy. So we can see from here, there are so many stakeholders. We have educator unions like NUTP, National Union for Teaching Profession. They are fighting the rights and the welfare of the teachers. They want promotion all the time. They want this extra critical allowance for teaching, for taking CCA and all these things. And they want teaching assistant, they want administrating staff, because they don't want the office administration work. They just want to teach, and that's it. And they want more holidays, actually, even though the school holidays is so long. I don't know whether I can see some of you just shake the head or disagree. Okay, later you can ask me questions. Okay, politician and all these things. So the next step is, of course, to craft a good policy. Policymakers must understand the prediction of the effect. Next. Okay, the prediction of effect is something that policymakers should be able to read and feel the community pulse, feeling that. But some policymakers or even the leaders in the education is not aware of things that can happen in future. That is prediction. So as far as makers are concerned, for example, I'll quote a story, a short story. A minister previously, this is true story. The Minister of Education visited a rural area, somewhere maybe in East Malaysia, far away in a remote area, and he saw the students. Maybe the students are so quite poor, and then they have only one pair of shoes to wear. Formerly, last time it was only a white shoes are allowed, right? White shoes are allowed, and then that white shoes looks like a black shoes. You know why? Because of the dirt, and they only afford to wear one pair per week. And in the end, the minister come back and said, it will be a good idea to have black shoes for the school children. Why? Because that will hide even the dirt, and then you have a uniformity of black color that good. So suddenly they impose that kind of policy. School children must wear black shoes now. No need to wear white shoes to keep the image for neatness of these shoes. But unfortunately, the side prediction was that the manufacturer already order all the white shoes from China, import from many countries. They imported, they buy the materials for white shoes. Then this is the side effect. It affects the manufacturer, it affects the importer, it affects the sales, the man in the street, all these the seller, the pasar malam seller, white shoes. Then hue and cry all over. So this is the side effect. With no intention, the ministry intention is a good intention to make the children, school children look neat and smart in one uniform color, black color. But that policy is being flip-flopped. In other words, then it goes back to, okay, for this year, you can choose whether to wear white or black. And then comes another administrator, another ministry, say, doesn't care, we'll follow whether it's black and white. So this is a prediction on what they call an unintended effect of it. So it happens, it happens. There are many other examples. It will take a lot of time for me to cerita, so-called to tell the stories. PTPN also one of the examples. PTPN of these things, unintended effect of these things. But I'll cut short the presentation because of the time limit. Okay, next. Another side effect is the school-based assessment. Because parents complain that our children are having too many homework, too many tuitions for public exams and all these things. And we are loaded with tuition, with piano class, music class, other extra co-curricular activities and all these things. So the ministry hear it, that, and then decided maybe we should put on more emphasis on school-based assessment instead of public exam, put less pressure on our school children. So in order to do that, they created a school-based assessment program where teachers are given assignment, given quiz, given pop quiz, or given project work and all this, where the students have to take home, do it a field work and all these things. But to compile the data and then to enter the data online, at one point, they to majlis peperiksaan or the examination, you have to be one, computer savvy. Your teachers must be computer savvy, literate, and then be able to log in to the system. But the system cannot support so many teachers. We have 420,000 teachers all over the country in 10,000 schools. We cannot, the system cannot support such so many key in and all these things. Teachers complain, teachers say so much of what they call administration work, and they have to stay up. I don't know how many of you are teachers before. You have to stay up 2 or 3 a.m. just to key in, so that because the internet access can be free at that time, others are sleeping while the teachers are working. So many complaints here and there because of this. So they taken off from centralizing it. Now school-based exam is truly through the teachers recording. You can record it manually. So they keep changing. These are policies that keep changing with good intention, but got side effect. The side effect that comes out only after the implementation. This is the point I'm trying to stress for the Malaysian context. So we do make mistake, but the mistake are coming out from good intention. It's not that we want to torture the teachers. The ministry, I mean, we are not torturing the teachers, but teachers are teachers. They do what you are calling them to do. But that is the side effect that a good policy will be, maker will be able to predict or see on the front side. They have to see it. So how can that be minimized? I think through evidence-based research and findings, that should help a lot. Okay, next. So this is just to show you what you want to know all about Malaysia education system, both for primary and secondary schools as well as Form 6. These are all contained in the 11 shift to transform the system. Next slide, please. So basically, the 11th shift is to provide equal access to quality education, meaning that whether you are in the rural area, you are in the urban area, where you are in the remote area, you should be, education is our children's right. Then it should be quality access should be provided. So how do we know that our education system in Malaysia is of quality? So we benchmark it against the international assessment, like TIMSS. TIMSS stands for Trends in International Mathematics and Science Studies, which what you call it, administered to Year 4 or Standard 4, okay, and Year 8 students or Form 2 students. That is TIMSS. 4 years, they conduct it 4 years once. And also PISA exam. PISA is programmed for international students, student assessment by OECD. That is 3 years once on a 15 years old. So with that benchmarking of science and mathematics as well as languages, we will know where we stand in the international benchmarking for quality education. Just like Cambridge, I work in an international school now. I know Cambridge have Year 6 checkpoint and Year 9 checkpoint. Year 6 is Standard 6 for students. Year 9 is for Form 3, Form 3, but we call it Year 9, Cambridge. But they are not, they enter international school 1 year earlier, 6 years old, but our national school is 7 years old. So they have an advantage of 1 year ahead, all these things. And also, these 11 shift also emphasize on quality teachers. Now, to become a teacher is not that easy in the government schools. You need the straight A's for that purpose. So they take in only the good students for being a teacher. So I have another 5 more minutes. Next. Next slide. This is the example of scenario. I'm sure this is the assignment for your class if you have a class, but I'm not going to give you any more assignment. So let's move on to another slide. This is the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2015 and 2025. I'm part of the task force, secretariat, for example. And I also, I think Dr. Nasri also part of it at one time. And then I'm also one of the writers in the chapter 3 for lifelong learning. That's why I'm quite passionate in lifelong learning. Next. So these are the 10 strategic shifts in Malaysia higher education, which is very important. You will look at it in the Malaysian context. 1, 2, 3, 4 is actually the outcomes. We want, what do you call it? We want holistic, well-balanced entrepreneurial graduates. They are job creators rather than job seekers. We want talent excellence, including the academic staff, the professors, and all this. They must be excellence in what they do. That's why there's what we call a playbook that's been developed. Inside there, the policies for academicians who excel in teaching and learning, academicians who are good in research, academicians who are good in administration and leadership, and academicians that are practitioner, because some of the things that happening outside the world, we need the practitioner to be part of the academician to impart their knowledge and their experience to our students. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4. They are for shift number 2. It's what the four tracks of career pathway for the academician. This is what is happening in shift 2. Shift 3, of course, lifelong learning. Learning never stop. What we call from cradle to grave. Until you are 6 feet under, you will not stop learning, even though you are old age. And then, of course, TVET is another important area of education for higher education. And shift 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 will be the what do you call it? Enablers. Enablers that if we can have some financial what do you call it? Financial sustainability, and then globalized online and all these things. I think I leave it up to you if you are interested. This is what Malaysian higher education policy is all about, and also the Malaysian education blueprint for primary and secondary education. I think I have reached the time to further talk about all these things. There are a lot of slides, subsequent slides, which I think I'll leave it to the secretariat to distribute to those who are interested to find out more. Those are the details of every shift. Can you go fast? Okay, so in every chapter in this shift, what is really interesting to read is that they'll tell you what success will look like. How you look at it, in this shift, what success will be look like? What success will be? Let's say for the holistic entrepreneur and balanced graduate, you have a successful graduate will have a knowledge and skills, as well as the ethics and integrity and morality. We want to aspire to produce a holistic graduate, appropriate behavior, mindset, job seekers to job creator. So what are the key initiatives will be put there, and some of the outcomes. So subsequently, we have all the 10 shifts. So I think I'll leave it up to here for that matter. Thank you very much. I think I've covered most of the things that need to be covered for the Malaysian context in the Malaysia education system. And of course, may I have the last but not least, the slide on the 30th slide, the key challenges. And these are some of the key challenges. The font is very small, so I don't think we can So some of the key challenges will still be lack of access of higher education. Then we have all the we align it with all the shift, lack of industry, especially industry relevant courses, demand versus supply, all these things. So thank you very much. I think, thank you. We'll leave the Q&A session to the after Dr. Nasri presentation this afternoon, right? Three of us will be, three presenter will be asking, will be answering the Q&A session later on if there is any further question. Thank you.